24/7 Sports Director of Scouting Adam Finkelstein, and you are watching College Basketball Recruiting Weekly. We've got another exciting show for you this week. Lots to talk about, including the transfer portal. It's popping, but there's still some key prospects left on the board. We're then going to talk about the latest recruiting intel out of the high school ranks. Finally, some high school prospects going pro. Last but not least, the April Live period is around the corner and ready to go this coming weekend. Just when you think the transfer portal is starting to slow down, you see a whirlwind of commitments in 48 hours and another round of players going into the portal. And it's a good thing, too, because some of the most prominent college basketball programs in the country are still looking for players. So, who are the best ones on the board? Let's break them down. All right, we're going to welcome in Eric Bossi and Travis Branham and break down some of the best remaining transfers still on the board. Bossi, I'm going to start with you. We've got Hunter Dickinson, the Michigan big man, looking for a new home. What are you hearing most recently?
The deal with Hunter Dickinson is pretty interesting because there's no shortage of all kinds of rumors and stuff flying around on the internet. You know, he was supposedly spotted on Villanova's campus. It did not happen. We do know that he met with Georgetown and Maryland over the weekend, and he's going to be taking an official visit to Kansas on Thursday. And it still appears to be those three teams that are kind of out at the front with what's going on. Villanova still in there, yes. Arkansas maybe still in there some. Kentucky, some other schools getting thrown around. But as it stands, it still appears to be Maryland, Georgetown, and Kansas kind of battling this one out, and really too close to call at this point.
All right, and quick note there, Kansas obviously hosting him for that visit. The two local schools, Maryland, just recently added his high school coach, Mike Jones, former head coach at DeMatha Catholic, who then went to Virginia Tech to start his college career, has recently come back home to that area. So he is on the Maryland staff now, perhaps a factor there as well. In Georgetown, I think what I was told is initially there was some apprehension from Dickinson not knowing who exactly he was going to be playing with, but because they've had some recent success in the portal, that's starting to become more clear. All right, next guy up on the board, we're going to go with Nick Timberlake. Trav, I'm going to go with you. What are we hearing about Nick Timberlake and what it's coming down to?
Yeah, he was actually one of the earliest entrants into this transfer portal. He's one of the top players out there right now, and he's taken 3 visits to UConn, North Carolina, and also to Kansas. This is a tough bucket-getting guard who's athletic. He plays well through contact. He just finished his 3rd and final visit to UConn, and he announced last night that a decision will be made this week. It's sounding on my end that this will be coming out towards the later end of this week. As far as determining a leader, this thing has not been easy, and as far as my knowledge and what my sources are telling me, no decision has been made as of yet. So this thing's coming down to the very wire. But whoever gets him is getting an impact player who will be just an instant offensive weapon next season.
He's also from the state of Massachusetts, which is less than 90 minutes away from UConn's campus and stores. We'll see if that is a factor. Last but not least, Bossi, I will go back to you. Max A. Smith, what are we hearing?
Yeah, so Max, of course, is the transfer guard out of Oral Roberts, who's scored like 2,600 points, I think, in his career. Looking at primarily Kansas State, Texas, and possibly reuniting with Paul Mills at Wichita State after Mills got that job. He's coming off a weekend visit to Kansas State. Sources are indicating that it was a pretty strong visit out there. Now they just need to kind of likely hold off Texas. We know Texas, they need a guard bad. They had A.J. Johnson go pro on him last week. Tyrese Hunter is in the NBA draft, unsure if he's going to be back. And you've got Arterio Morris, another who's taken a visit to Kansas, by the way, in the portal as well. So a playmaker and a scorer like Max for them can really do some wonders. I think it's one that is probably going to trend to move really quickly as soon as he gets that Texas visit locked in. But looking like Kansas State and Texas are the two that are primarily going to fight it out for him.
All right, so while transfers continue to fly off the board, we will always have you covered on 247sports.com, not just with the news of the transfer commitments, but with the best available list. As you can see, the top 10 right there. Transfer portal, NIL, professional commitments. it's all a domino effect, and it impacts high school recruiting. We've seen a busy week on the high school front as well. David Castillo, he's off the board to Kansas State. Silas Demary, no longer going to USC. What might that mean for Bronny James? We're going to talk about it. Silas Demary, who decommitted from USC, where he was part of one of the top classes in the country, going to head out there and join the backcourt with Isaiah Collier. He's no longer doing that, though, and perhaps that could be an indication that the Trojans are approaching a commitment from another unsigned guard in the class of 2023. Maybe Bronny James? Bossi, what say you?
It's going to be interesting because there's a lot to look at with the Silas Demary decommitment. One, you have to factor in Boogie Ellis has decided to come back to USC to use his COVID year. So when he committed, Demary playing time was a big portion of this, right? So he had to have known that Isaiah Collier was in the mix at that time. But if he was expecting Boogie Ellis to be gone, then that could be another thing. And now there's a lot of smoke about Bronny and possibly ending up at USC. It's close to home. It's going to be an easy to monitor situation for his family. And now you see a guy like Demary who's caring a lot about playing time, announcing that he's going to pull back on it without there really being a clear favorite for where he's going to end up on things. It's getting harder and harder not to put two and two together on this one. Now, of course, getting any real information out of Bronny's camp isn't the greatest, but beginning of the McDonald's All-American game, talking to kids, and then stuff coming out of the Hoop Summit, there was starting to be a lot of feel that USC was in a pretty good position with Bronny. And, just seeing Silas Demary back out now, it's hard not to think that something could be happening with Bronny there in the relatively near future.
Now, Bossi, let me ask you this, and Trav, feel free to jump in on this one too, but it's my assumption at this point, and I want to see if this is misguided. If he goes to college, it feels like it's USC. So right now it feels like, and again, nobody's saying this publicly, this is speculative, but it feels like it's the G League or USC at this point. Would you guys, just real quickly, would you guys agree with that or disagree with that?
I would disagree. I actually do think that there's some rumblings that there's other schools involved, one of those potentially being Ohio State. Now, they did just pick up another transfer today, actually, in Dale Bonner, so their roster is filling up. But there has been some legitimate rumblings at Ohio State, and obviously with the James family, LeBron's from the area and has been a longtime Ohio State fan, so the connection is there. So for me personally, I haven't ruled them out, but to your credit and what you're saying and what Bossi is also saying, signs are pointing to USC as of this point.
Bossi, anything to add on that?
Yeah, no, I think Ohio State has definitely been trying to get involved, and they've been more active in the recruitment of late, been able to confirm that. But I just think all that's going to come along with, you're talking about a guy that, for security reasons, the McDonald's All-American game, had his own room, had a security guard outside the room. They're going to want some comforts with things. And just logistically, if he goes to college, USC is in such better position to be able to handle what's going to be needed for him on a daily basis, assuming they still want to have security and all these things around him, that if he goes the college route, I really think they've taken a pretty good lead now. Things can always change, but that seems to be the general consensus behind the scenes, and we'll see if that plays out.
All right. Now, one player who we know is now off the board in the class of 2024, we've talked about this trend, prospects committing earlier and earlier. The most recent one, David Castillo, off the board to Kansas State. I really like this commitment. I think Jerome Tang did some just absolute miracle work this season, what he was able to do out of the transfer portal, getting what he got out of Marquise Noel. When he first got to that Kansas State job, he was very open about the fact that he wanted to try and recreate some of the backcourt magic that they had at Baylor, really looking for a lead guard who could do that. In my mind, Castillo is very much that person. Ebas, I want to get your take on this, but I'm going to start with a premise, and that is that Castillo is a volume scoring guard who can really get buckets and put points on the board when he's got freedom and spacing. But when you see him in USA basketball settings, you see a willingness to become more of a traditional point guard. So this, to me, is an ideal fit for a Kansas State program that wants to play with multiple playmakers, multiple attackers in the backcourt. What are your thoughts on it?
So the deal with Castillo is pretty interesting to me because seeing him with his high school team this winter, and also sometimes seeing him in the summertime in a non-USA basketball situation, he struggles a little bit with some ball pressure and being a full-time point guard because he does want to score. I think he's really at his heart a little bit of an undersized two guard, and that's fine, especially with the way K-State's going to play and the freedom that they're going to have. But as you bring up at USA basketball, he just seems to be a totally different player than you see in other things. I don't know if that's a matter of how much more talent around he's got around him, because at Bartlesville, he does not have a lot of talent around him. He's not exactly playing for a loaded high school team. So I think he's going to settle into that combo guard role where, hey, you can go score first, but we can also put you in some ball screens and have you make some decisions. But at the end of the day, I think you're recruiting David Castillo to score. And Jerome Tang, whether it was the way he played when he was assistant at Baylor or how he showed that he's playing at Kansas State last year, he's going to give his guards freedom. And I think bringing him in with presumably some guys will be a year into the program with Day Ames and guys like that, he should be a nice fit for them.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's a terrific fit, the ability to play on off the ball, look for his own shot. For much more on Castillo, latest rankings, latest commitments, as always, visit 247sports.com. We've got you covered. Well, it was supposed to be that NIL would keep everyone in college and prevent them from going pro. But A.J. Johnson decided he's not going to Texas. He's going abroad to play professional basketball. And now Dink Pate announcing that he will skip college basketball and head to the G League Ignite for 2 seasons. All right, now if Bronny James does decide to go to the G League, we're getting a better idea of who he might be playing with. In fact, most recently it was Dink Pate, who agreed to a contract with G League Ignite. Bossi, I will start with you. You've seen a lot of Dink Pate over the years. What is it that the G League is getting in this young man?
So Dink Pate is a long and wiry wing, versatile wing. He can really play kind of 1 through 3. His high school team played him at the point guard position, which I don't know that that's what suits him best long term, but he does have some creativity off the dribble at 6'7", extremely quick, big time first step. Very, very athletic. The news of him choosing the G League, I don't think is a surprise. It's a pretty poorly guarded secret coming out of the Texas area that he was very unlikely to play college basketball. However, seeing him choose to graduate a year early and join the class of 2023 and make a 2-year commitment to the G League is the real news here. He's a guy who definitely has legitimate NBA upside with his size and ability to put the ball in the hole. It's going to be a matter of him going there and getting stronger, getting a little bit more consistent, and really getting a little bit better with his decision-making process. But the raw talent is all there, and he's got extremely high upside.
Yeah, I think the word consistency is the total key here. Travis, I want to ask you about the rest of this G League Ignite class. We've got Modest Buzelis. We've got Terry Darland, who I know is from NBA Academy, someone who you've watched quite a bit. And then we've got London Johnson, who's returning for his second year. It seems to me that the task of recruiting for G League Ignite is probably more challenging than ever, given the rise of NIL. But this group collectively, what are your thoughts on it?
They got a lot of talent at hand, but at the same time, these are a lot of kids with a lot of question marks in their games, with just a lot of development in their near futures. Speaking on Terry Darland, he's a shooting guard, but that has had the ball quite a bit in his hands over at the NBA Academy. He's being asked to run the point. He can make shots, but he's not the best athlete. He doesn't play he's not the strongest or most physical, so he's not the best playing through contact. There's a lot of areas that he's going to have to continue to grow and develop in, especially going to a grown man's league in the G League. Similarly, Modest Buzelis, not a physical prospect at all. He's got good size, but he's very, very lean, very thin, will never really put on much weight, never going to be able to handle much contact. So how will he be playing next year, especially for a guy who likes to have the basketball in his hands, who likes to put the ball on the ground, get into the paint and try to create for others? He has improved as a shooter quite a bit. A lot of potential, but going up to the professional level is definitely going to be something to monitor moving forward. And then London Johnson, a former 4-star recruit out of the Atlanta area. He was one of those that similar. It was a very poorly kept secret. We all expected him to go. He's actually made more progress, I'd say, at the G League than I would have anticipated in year number 1. I mean, he joined them at the halfway mark through the season, but he did show some encouraging things in year number 1. So all in all, it's a talented group, but a group that I think you're really going to have to mold and kind of groom, if you will, for the next level. Some of these guys, the adversity that they're about to face, it's going to be sink or swim time, and we're really going to learn a lot about them as prospects.
Yeah, I just don't know that there are any sure things in this group. And you know, we've talked a lot about how next year's NBA draft, the 2024 NBA draft, is perceived as a very weak one, which creates opportunity. But simultaneously, we're seeing players go back to college. We're seeing Kyle Filipowski. We're seeing a number of others who are saying, you know what, I'm going to roll the dice on that 2024 draft. And there are high upside prospects in the G League. Dink Pate, certainly, to be clear, he would be eligible in 2025, not 24. But these are not necessarily guaranteed long-term NBA players. So they are going all in on this professional path without the opportunity to go back to college. Remember, OTE now, they've basically changed the way they do this with a lot of their kids, and they have an opportunity to go to college because they're getting compensated through NIL. The G League Ignite does not do that. So once you go to G League Ignite, college basketball is off the table. Going to be very interesting to see what happens, but Dink Pate, certainly one of the most talented prospects in all of high school basketball with a tremendous upside. We don't know what next year's rosters look like yet, but guess what? We're going to start recruiting for the high school class of 2024 this coming weekend because the April live period is back, meaning college coaches can go to grassroots team events across the country. Our full 24/7 sports staff will be out to cover all of the action. All right, Travis, you and I were both on the road last weekend for the beginning of the grassroots season. College coaches, Division I college coaches, I should say, are coming out this coming weekend as the sneaker circuits will be back in business for the 2023 calendar year. Here's my question. Given how many of these schools are still active in the portal, given the rising costs of recruiting these days in terms of hosting official visits, what do you expect college coach traffic to be like in the month of April?
Honestly, I expect it to be cut in half typically to what we'll see in June or July period. It's been a regular topic of conversation. Coaches will call, and they're just basically the topic of conversation revolves around changing this recruiting calendar. Recruiting in April has never been more difficult. You're trying to map out your 2024, 2025 board already. So you're needing to get out and start evaluating these players. But at the same time, you're, like you said, you're bringing in these transfers in for visits and just trying to keep up with the chaos that is the transfer portal. It's changing every single day. Things move extremely fast. So you got to lock in your roster for next season. So not many coaches will be out there, and a lot of them are basically wanting to see this month of April kind of be pushed to the month of May. The month of May is a dead period for all these college coaches, so they are not on the roads evaluating like the rest of us. So that is a period of time where it's very open that they could then put all these official visits into the month of April, take that pressure off, and really dive into the high school stuff come May.
And if you're watching at home, the background is that college coaches, again, Division I college coaches, they are allowed to go out and watch grassroots style events, team events, AAU tournaments, even though they're not officially AAU, is what most people refer to them as. They're allowed to do that 2 weekends a year in the spring, and that is the last 2 weekends in the month of April. But given the rise of transfer portal recruitment, there are so many schools that are not done building out next year's roster that are still hosting official visits. So it really creates a scenario where you don't have as many coaches on the road. We saw that last April. As Travis said, I think we will see it again this April. May would be more logical given the current landscape of the transfer portal, but right now everything happens in April. We'll be on the road. I will be at Adidas 3SSB with Eric Bossi. Travis will be at Nike EYBL. Brandon Jennings, Deshaun London, they'll be on the road as well. We will have all those recaps and coverage live for you on the 247sports.com site. I'd just like to end with a very sincere thank you to all of you who watch at home. The viewership continues to go up with each passing week, and we couldn't be more excited about continuing to bring this unprecedented recruiting coverage to you every single week. We're going to be on the road this week for the live period, but next week we will be back with you. So until then, have a great week.